from the Mueller report, the investigation did not establish members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. I earlier read the statement from the president's attorneys, Jay Sekulow and Rudy Giuliani. One of them joins me right now, Jay Sekulow, also the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. I read the whole thing. I suffered through it because it was monotonous.
Yeah.
Why don't I just let you explain your take on it at this point, because you couldn't cooperate any more than you did. Even Mueller acknowledged that they had pretty much all the answers they needed. To me, this is now dead, except for Congress needing to cling on to something because they hate Trump so psychotically.
Well, you heard Congressman Nadler's press conference. I mean, it was deflated. They are deflated. The fact of the matter is the basis upon which this inquiry began was allegations of collusion or conspiracy between the Russian government and Russian agents and members of the Trump campaign and the Trump campaign. And everybody found there were no such activities. None. That was the conclusion. No collusion. Then with obstruction, they go through 200 pages of recitations of law and fact to conclude that they can't make a determination that the president, in fact, violated the law. That's what it says. And it's interesting to watch some of the spin on some of these networks, but the truth of the matter, that's what it says. And therefore, they make no conclusion except to say that we're not saying the president violated the law. Well, if he didn't violate the law, then guess what this is? A declination letter. If they had an obstruction case, they would have put it forward. They did not.
Look, we all know if Mueller had it, he would have run with it. And you're right, it is a declination letter. Now, they come up, though, with their 10 possibilities. And, I actually predicted this last night on TV, that they'd say, well, the president, he hoped that General Flynn wasn't in trouble. He wouldn't get in trouble. Well, General Flynn still got in trouble. Well, he wanted to fire Mueller, and he told Don McGahn. I'm like, what relevance is that? He has the power to fire anybody he wanted to in this case. He didn't.
But he didn't. Of course, he had the constitutional authority under Article 2. He did not. So when you go through each of these, it ends up with the same conclusion, and that is no legal violation.
At the end of the day, when you think of all the time, money, effort put into this thing, and when we now have 4 instances, the FBI investigation, we learned with the recently released closed-door testimony of Strzok and Page, they revealed something I found fascinating, which was that the FBI had no power to make any decisions as it related to Hillary Clinton's investigation, because those decisions were being made by the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, the same person that was telling James Comey it's a matter, it's not an investigation, and met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac in Phoenix. So we have 53 more of those to come. But I look at that and I'm like, wow, that was never fully investigated. As a matter of fact, it looks like that investigation was rigged.
I want to go through with you a couple of the key, because few people are going to read 400 pages, okay? I did. So let me go through. I'm going to do this with you tonight, but I think this is important for the people to understand. Page 2. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Page 187, same kind of thing. Page 181, the investigation did not establish that the contact described in Volume 1, which is all of the collusion issues, amounted to an agreement to commit the violation of any federal law. Okay, that's. I'm only on page. Now I'm going to go to the next one. This was also page 1 and 2 in the summary. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired to coordinate with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Page 9. The evidence was not sufficient to support criminal charges regarding a Trump Tower meeting. Here we go again on page 9. And our evidence about the June 9th meeting and the WikiLeaks releases of hacked materials was not sufficient to charge a criminal campaign finance violation. I could go on and on. The office has not uncovered evidence that Paul Manafort brought the Ukrainian peace plan to the attention of the president or the administration. I mean, on and on it goes.
Let me then focus on where the media is on here, because it's so declarative. And then it says, well, it was very interesting because both Rod Rosenstein, the Office of Legal Counsel, joining the Attorney General, on the issue of obstruction that Mueller left to them, and had he had the evidence. You know, in most cases, Jay, if they investigate somebody and they don't have the evidence to indict and bring that case forward, you don't hear about all the background noise that they looked into. But that's not the case here. And every single thing that I read was, okay, we know this already. We know the president vented. We know the president was angry. We publicly called it a witch hunt. He publicly hoped that Lieutenant General Flynn wouldn't get in trouble. He openly said that probably Mueller should be fired, and Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions. He was not shy about expressing that. For example, we do know that Rod Rosenstein and others talked about wearing a wire secretly against the president. We know they talked about invoking the 25th Amendment, but they didn't do those things. So those are words versus actions. Now, as it relates to law, there's a great distinction there.
Yes, but let me give you another bit of reality news. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, based on what we've seen to date, that's talking about after the report's been out, going forward on impeachment is not worthwhile at this point. Very frankly, there's an election in 18 months, and the American people will make a judgment.
Well, I mean, that
sum up the victory right there.
That sums up the victory pretty much in full. You know, I do worry about a double standard here, because there are really serious issues that if we don't get to the bottom of, I'm worried about our Constitution, equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws. And we do have a lot of evidence. We know that Hillary Clinton violated the Espionage Act. We know even James Comey acknowledged he had top secret classified information on that private server in a mom and pop shop bathroom closet called Platte Rivers Network. And we do know that when she was subpoenaed, 33,000 emails were deleted. The hard drive was bleach bit erased, and devices were broken up with hammers, and SIM cards were removed. Now,
let me tell you what's more important than all of that in my mind.
Okay.
How did this investigation start?
Tell me.
What started this investigation?
When did it start?
Because that's exactly right. More important than all the Hillary Clinton stuff is this issue. Americans were surveilled through FISA warrants, which resulted in an operation called Operation Crossfire Hurricane, which became spying, as the Attorney General said, on a political campaign, a big deal. That morphed into a collusion inquiry or conspiracy inquiry that morphed into an obstruction inquiry. We've got to find out how this started, because that's the outrage to the Constitution.
John Solomon hinted last night that this investigation did not start on the purported date of July 31st, 2016, as we believed up to this point. He thinks it started months and months earlier. Is there any evidence to that fact as of now?
I don't know that evidence. I know that when this started, it was labeled Crossfire Hurricane. They created their, in my mind, that's a line out of Jumping Jack Flash, by the way, from the Rolling Stones.
No,
I think they've created their. I think they're born in a Crossfire Hurricane. I think they've started their own Crossfire Hurricane here, and I think this Attorney General will get to the bottom of it.
What about the issue, though? There's other issues involved here. If we really cared about collusion, number one, we have evidence the Ukrainian officials are admitting publicly that they tried to interfere in our elections and are willing to provide evidence. Nobody seems interested. We also have this whole issue of this bought and paid for phony dossier. According to testimony of Bruce Orr, everybody was warned that it was tainted, that Christopher Steele hated President Trump. Christopher Steele does not stand behind his own dossier anymore in an interrogatory in Great Britain. We know that Hillary paid for it. None of that was told the FISA court. So wouldn't that mean in these FISA applications that they committed fraud on a court?
That's why the investigation of what transpired here is absolutely critical, and we have to get to the bottom of it. I believe this Attorney General will.
Do you believe, as I believe, that the phony Russian dossier was used as the insurance policy to destroy a duly elected president, to attempt to destroy him?
I think that was the attempt. It did not. I think there was insurance policies in place on multiple fronts that were not cashed in, so to speak. But, Sean, I think it raises a very serious legal issue as to what really is at stake here. And what's really at stake here is something horrible happened. No other president should have to go through this ever again, period.
This would be, having followed this case, which 99.9% of the media went in one direction, and they lied every night for 2.5 years, collusion, Russia, Russia, Russia. Well, now we've had the fourth confirmation that there never was any Trump-Russia collusion. We had the 9-month FBI report, the House Intel report, the bipartisan Senate report, nothing. Everyone has exonerated the president. But on the other hand, we do see a rigged investigation for Hillary with real evidence. We do see that a phony, unverified Russian dossier bought by Clinton using a foreign national with funneled money was used to deny an American citizen his constitutional rights, and it also allowed the opposition party to spy on the Trump campaign during the election, on top of Stefan Halper looking into Papadopoulos and Page and Clovis.
Look, this matter has to be investigated significantly, seriously, and with an eye towards what the Constitution requires and mandates. I think Bill Barr, without question, is going to do that. He has said it. He takes spying on a campaign seriously. He said it is a big deal. I think you've seen the leadership from him time and time again over the last several months, and I think you'll continue to see that.
Here's what we have outstanding. 53 closed-door testimonies we haven't seen. We also have the Attorney General mentioning that there was spying and that a full investigation into this whole issue will take place. Then we have the Inspector General Horowitz report on FISA abuse. We expect that report in May. Then we have John Uber. He's looking into leaking. We'll get that report. Then we also, the president in the last interview I had with him, he will make available to the public the FISA applications. He'll also the 302s, the Gang of Eight. All this information will be public. I know a lot, based on my sources, what we will find out. And there is a real abuse of power here. Knowing the media, and they seem to now be pushing towards either getting his taxes or hanging on to this to the very last moment, and beginning impeachment proceedings, which I think are absurd, but they might.
No, they're not. So I want to say something on that, Sean. I mean, Steny Hoyer's statement is not an accident. This is the Democratic majority leader, okay? And based on what we've seen today, going forward on impeachment is not worthwhile at this time. Very frankly, there's an election in 18 months, and the American people will make a judgment. That's about as good as it's going to get from them. I
think this issue is dead and done.
Yes.
In terms of the president.
The TV networks are trying to hang in there, but they know it, and it's going very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I know how hard you work. I actually think this case was won by not allowing, after all that you turned over and allowing everybody to testify and no executive privilege ever invoked, that, I think that allowing the president to speak to this special counsel with the record of setting up perjury traps would have been a mistake.
Well, I wouldn't have let you do that. I wouldn't let anybody else do. I mean, no lawyer worth their salt would have allowed that.
All right, Jay Sekulow, attorney for the president. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you on Hannity tonight, 9 Eastern.